Welcome to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, hosted by me, Zibby Owens. It's an award-winning podcast with over 1,900 episodes, all featuring authors of books you love and those you have yet to discover. Listen daily 5 times a week. Then go to zibbymedia.com and learn more about what the LA Times called the Zibbyverse. Zibby Media includes Zibby's Bookshop, an independent bookstore in Santa Monica, Zibby Books Publishing, Zibby Retreats, Zibby's Book Club, and more. Go check it out at zibbymedia.com and follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens. It'll take you where you need to go. Thanks for listening. Eileen Goudge is the author of All They Need to Know, a novel. Eileen is the New York Times bestselling author of more than 20 novels, including Garden of Lies, One Last Dance, and The Diary. Together, they have sold over 6 million copies worldwide. Eileen draws from her own experiences in writing women's fiction, exploring recurring themes of sisterhood, friendship bonds, the joys and heartaches of romance, and reversals of fortune. Eileen got her start as a ghostwriter for the popular teen series Sweet Valley High, which spawned multiple spin-offs and a TV series. Between cooking up plots for her novels, Eileen can often be found in her kitchen, kneading bread or rolling out pie dough. In 2005, she published a cookbook, Something Warm from the Oven, filled with family recipes and recipes contributed by readers. She lives with her husband, Sandy Kenyon, the former entertainment reporter and film critic for WABC TV in Sacramento. By the way, Sandy Kenyon had me on his show, I think 4 or 5 times, and he is amazing. For more information, visit eileengouge.com. Welcome, Eileen. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss All They Need to Know, a novel. Congratulations. It's so fun to see you.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. It's funny because usually I listen to your podcast when I'm on the treadmill at the gym. So I feel like I should be on a treadmill.
I mean, hop on. It's totally fine with me. I won't be upset.
Girl, you and I have gone some miles together.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah. I'm glad other people walk while I sit here and, have my body just naturally spread out to fill my chair seat. So
I know it's a great way to work out and tighten your muscles while you're expanding your mind, learning about books and other authors. That's just a great way to make it all come together.
Well, now you've given me ideas about how I should partner with treadmill manufacturers. And I'm going to write it down, see if I can get that going. Anyway, about your book, All They Need to Know. Please tell listeners what it's about.
Well, it's about a woman who's escaping her abusive husband, and she reinvents herself as a police sketch artist. And she draws lines to stop crimes, as they say in the business. And she finds that very empowering. And then she is put to the ultimate test when she has to stop the biggest and scariest criminal of all, which is her husband.
Wow. So where did this come from? And also talk about sort of the ensemble cast. I feel like this is such a visual narrative. Like I can see the whole thing, like it's like Steel Magnolias with like dirt roads or something. Like I can see the house and the tattoos and the whole thing. So talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, she relocates from the East Coast to the West Coast, and she finds herself in this quaint California mountain town. And she's befriended by this group of women who call themselves the Tattooed Ladies, but they're really not like sideshow circus tattooed ladies. They met through one of the members who is a tattoo artist, and that's how they know each other. And the whole thing was inspired by my friendships and how meaningful they've been in my life. And I belong to a group of women. We call ourselves the Beach Babes. We were all writers, and we call it the Beach Babes. Came from the fact that we would met at a beach house in California every year for 7 years until the pandemic. And then things kind of got scattered after that, but we're still very tight. And we come from all over the country, one from Canada. We're from different walks of life. We're different ages. And we're all just like, we get together like kids at a slumber party. We're just like sisters, and we hang out in our PJs, and we share our powder room confidences and laugh and cry. And it's just so meaningful. And I wanted to capture that in All They Need to Know. I wanted to shine a light on how empowering friendships are in our lives.
I think it's nice that you highlight it doesn't have to just be college girlfriends or something. I mean, there's a lot written about the power of younger friendships and when you're together before you all are in marriages or this or that. But like the friends that you make at a particular stage in life, later in life, is so unique as well and deserves a lot of ink.
Well, it's especially it's interesting because at different points in your life, friends have different meanings. And now that I'm older, I would be very sorry to only be friends with people my age because they start to die off. So I feel so blessed that I have friends my kids' ages, and but we're like sisters. It's not like I'm the mom of the group, and nobody really thinks about age. We just hang out and have fun, and this way. My gosh, yes, I have younger people I can hang out with, and the only time we're reminded of our ages, in the difference in ages, is during our week at the beach. I was the only one who wasn't using tampons. They'd be swapping sanitary products. I'm like, I'm done with all that. So in All They Need to Know, Kyra, my heroine, these women are also different ages and different, different personalities. But I try to mix it up, not stereotype like one of the older ladies in the group is in her 60s. She's like the randiest, and she's like the one, dating and having a hot, sex life with online dating. And, it just, I try to show that it not stereotype people by age. And so I hopefully capture that in the book.
Tell me about the piece with domestic abuse and how obviously you have to be very careful writing about topics like this. And tell me about the inspiration for that and how we are meant to sort of receive all of that and what we should do with the information at the end.
Yes, yes. They say write what you know, and I have always written what I know, and I've been both blessed and cursed to have had a very interesting life. And as in the Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. And at one point in my life, I was in an abusive relationship, and that's what I drew from that experience in writing this book. And like my character, I relocated at that point, from the West Coast to the East Coast. And it was like, I don't know, I guess you have to have experienced what I did to know what it's like to live in a small town where not only your ex, but his whole family who hates you are sort of circling like sharks, it feels like at times. Like you'll be stop at a red light and you'll look over at the driver in the car next to you and they're giving you the stink eye and it's your ex-brother-in-law, that kind of thing. So I really just had to get away. And also I didn't feel safe. So I moved to the East Coast, and I can't say I reinvented myself, but I sort of invented myself because at that point I was just a new writer and I was just starting to make some money, and I had no money. That's the other thing. I was totally broke. But I wrote my way out of poverty, so to speak. And that's kind of what my character does. She has just limited resources, and she can't work in her profession because she's changed her name and living under a false identity. Well, I didn't do that, but I basically turned my whole life upside down. And then I moved to New York and things started happening and I got some book contracts, and boy, I don't know. I was really crazy or stupid because I would never recommend anyone to just like, oh, hey, I'm going to be a writer and make my fortune. You know how that goes. Most people's like, don't quit your day job. So I was very lucky in that respect. And so I really embraced the concept of reinvention, taking a bad thing that happened to you in life and turning it into something positive. And so, in my novel, all they need to know, that title comes from she's keeping secrets and she doesn't want her friends to know that she came from this abusive relationship, because that's the other thing that I wanted to talk about is the shame, victim shame. And I think those listening who've been there understand, others might not. They think, oh, well, what do you have to be ashamed about? You were the victim, and this person was abusing you. But there's a shame attached to, why didn't I leave sooner? Why did I stay? Why did I put up with it for 10 years in my case? And you don't have a good answer. And so you feel embarrassed. You don't want people to know that about yourself. And so that's the other theme of the novel, was getting over that shame and knowing that it wasn't her fault, and that she was actually give herself credit for getting out. And doesn't matter when you got out, it matters that you got out and that you found the strength to move on. And so that's really the other message of the book. And I hope others can take that. Anyone who's in that situation can take heart from that.
Eileen, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you had been through that yourself. And that's just terrible. I'm sorry.
Well, you know what? Like I said, both blessed and cursed, because I'm able to get in touch with those emotions what was it Nora Ephron said about life? It's all copy. Everything that happened to me in life, I can tap into those experiences and write, I think, a richer, better book as a result. Like, for instance, previous point in my life, I was in desperate straits, and I was a welfare mom. And I thought, well, I got to do something, to try to get out of the situation. That's when I started writing. That's what was the inspiration for my whole writing career. It was just, I got to get out of the situation. And then I ended up in another bad situation. But, it's interesting. When my first novel came out, and this was in the 80s, Garden of Lies, and I had occasion to have a chat with an editor who was bemoaning the fact that one of her authors, she had just launched one of her big book and was marketing it and doing publicity. Just, oh, the poor woman, she lives in the suburbs, and she's married to the same guy for her high school sweetheart, and she's just got this perfect life, and there's nothing for her to talk about on talk shows. And, I'm like, hey, book me on your show, Welfare Mom to Millionaire. It was so.
Oh my God!
It was just sort of ironic, if you know what I mean.
Wow. Well, I don't want you to have to dwell in those times, but I am curious. When you say it was abusive for 10 years and then you got out, can you give us just a little more? Like, what was it physical? Like, did something happen? When did you know it would be, I think that's the other thing when you read books or all of this, like the signs were there, but when did it start?
Right.
And did it progress slowly? Like, the rabbit with the water getting turned up, or the frog, or whatever that analogy, like how did you get the strength to leave? What was the tipping point?
Well, it's interesting, getting back to what you were saying before about when did I know? I actually knew before I married him, which I think it was like, having been a welfare mom, I was so kind of beaten down and felt so unworthy, I guess. And I guess I just didn't feel like I deserved better. And also, I was young enough to think I could change him. And I think that's the biggest falsehood to tell ourselves is, you know what, you ain't changing nobody. If you marry, what you're marrying is what you get, And I didn't know that at the time. And he was never physically abusive in the sense that he didn't hit me, but he would be, get into these rages, and he'd be screaming at you, and next thing you know, a fist flies back an inch from your face and puts a hole in the wall behind you, that kind of thing, where you're constantly afraid. And he was constantly having these drunken rages. And it was interesting because I thought I used to pray, that's the other thing. If you're in an abusive relationship, you hope the neighbors don't know. And I didn't know how much they were aware of. But after I finally got rid of him, got him to leave, I don't know how I did that, but through hook or by crook, they say, And this lady from across the street who had never really had much to do with her, she was kind of an older woman and she didn't come out of the house there very often. She came out of her house and walked across the street, which was kind of a big deal because, like I said, she had some mobility issues. She said, "Listen, honey, I'm with you. If you need anyone to testify in court, I've seen it all." And then I realized, of course, the neighbor knew everything. I
Oh,
wasn't hiding anything from anyone. Just, yeah.
oh my goodness. So, but how did you get out? I know you said by hook or by crook, but really, because so many people are stuck.
Well, it's interesting. I just tried to think of a way, and I finally, what the impetus was, a close writing friend of mine had a similar situation, and then she finally got rid of her husband. He was also a drunken, guy who's, similar to mine, but I don't think he was like angry. But she finally got rid of him, and I was so jealous. I was like, now I have no one like in the trenches with me. And then I realized, oh my God, I'm alone. I got to do this. I got to also for the sake of my kids. I had 2 young children at the time. And so I somehow convinced him that the only chance our marriage had was if he moved out, and then, we could see if we could work it out, just whatever wiles I had to use to get him out. And then once he was out, I thought locking the doors would do it, but then he broke in, so I had to change the locks. That's when I realized I really just have to move and get out of this town. And that's what led me to New York and my whole career in New York. Actually, now I'm back to my roots. I'm living in California again. My husband, Sandy, and I, my adorable husband, who's like the prince that came at the end of all the yes, my earlier Cinderella story. And anyway, so we're living in Sacramento and looking out at my fruit trees in the backyard. So there was a happy ending to my story.
Of course, Sandy Kenyon is like the nicest guy ever, friends to
Yes.
everyone in the world. I can't imagine him hurting a fly. And
No,
he
he's so
adores you.
sweet.
Oh my gosh,
He,
Eileen,
he is
every
the,
time you
he
just
is the
rave.
best. He's actually, when I met him, I was like, I'm never getting married again. No, this is just like, I'm just not cut out for this. And, obviously my pickers broke and all that. And he said something that resonated with me. He said, you've been with men who made your life more difficult. And I'm the guy who's going to make it easier. And I'm like,
Aw.
oh, sure, right. Ha. I didn't believe him because I never had that experience. I've only ever had the guys who were obstructionist or man babies or, you name it. And here's this like real man who was like a real friend and a helpmate. And so that was the other thing I tapped into in writing All They Need to Know. Kyra falls in love, or she tries not to in the early stages of their relationship, with her landlord, who's very attractive, obviously, and she's attracted to him, but she doesn't feel like she's ready. She can't. She's been burned, and she doesn't think like I thought. She thought her picker was broke and that nothing good could come of this. But he's like, I based him on Sandy, because he's there, he's studying, he's helping her. And, finally she realizes, hey, maybe this could work. And so, yeah, her story, I shouldn't give away. I'm being a spoiler here. But I think all of my stories have a satisfying ending, I should say. And the other thing I want to say is that my mantra in life is kind of just what it served me well. But when I'm in a tough situation or I'm faced with a challenge, I say to myself, you can do hard things. And that's the one thing all of the characters, the heroines in all my books have in common. They do hard things. Even when they feel like they can't, even when they feel like it's too much for them to overcome an obstacle, they do hard things.
You need to have Glennon Doyle like blurb your book or something.
We can all do hard things. Just say that to yourself and believe it, because it's true. You can do more than you think you can.
Especially you racing away, saving yourself with your young children to come to New York to be a writer and then actually doing it and being a lifelong career writer with so many books. I mean, it's astounding. It's a story in and of itself, right? I mean, how many books have you written or ghostwritten or whatever?
You'll get a kick out of this. So when I first moved to New York, I couldn't afford to live in Manhattan. I was living off the proceeds from the teen romances I was writing. I was one of the original writers of Sweet Valley High, the teen series. So I ended up, somebody said, well, move, there are affordable rentals in Brooklyn, and check the Jewish press. And so I checked and I thought, boy, there's sure a lot. I found something in Midwood eventually, which is in the heart of Brooklyn. And I thought, boy, this realtor Shomer Shabbos certainly has a lot of listings. And Shomer Shabbos, for those of you who aren't Jewish and don't speak Yiddish, means, Shabbos observers only. And I didn't know that. I thought it was the name of the realtor.
Oh my gosh.
So I ended up applying for this. It was like a walk up in a 2-family house. And the landlady and her husband were, he was a rabbi and she was, very Orthodox woman she wore a traditional marriage wig and everything. And she said, oh gosh, you seem so nice, but we don't really rent to she didn't say non-Jews, but she said people who don't celebrate, Sabbath, don't keep, observe Sabbath. And so I was like, I was trying not to throw myself in mercy, but she said, well, come on in. It's a cold day. Have a cup of tea. So we sat in her kitchen, talked. And at the end, she said, I never do this, and we don't do this in general in our community, but I really like you, and your kids are the same age as my kids. I think it'd be. So she rented me the apartment, and we became like best friends. And that's the other thing I was saying, goes back to what I was saying earlier, is it's so important to me to have not just friends from, different ages, but diverse friends. I'm just so fascinated by other cultures. And I probably know more about keeping kosher than any non-Jew that you've ever met, just from hanging out in my friend Faggy's kitchen.
Wow. What a story. Well, Eileen, I'm so excited for you. The story is so hopeful. It's funny. It's immersive. It reads like a movie. It's going to be great. I'm just so excited for you and your reinvention story and how it just keeps ticking on and your happy ending and all of it. It's just very inspiring.
I hope other readers can take hope from it. I know it's a novel. Mainly, I want people to be entertained, but I do also, that would be a nice thing for readers to take hope from it.
I'm sure they will. 100%. Thank you so much, Eileen. Thanks for coming on.
It's my pleasure. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Thanks for listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you love it, please leave a review and follow us on social @Zibby Owens and @Zibby Readers.